Welcome to Real Estate Radio Live, an informative and engaging podcast discussing everything you need to know about the world of real estate. Your host, Joe Cucchiara, provides you with insight and guidance on how to buy, sell, finance, and invest in real estate. He also offers real estate tax management strategies, new construction advice, home improvement tips, and much, much more. And now, to guide you around the world of real estate, here's your host and Real Estate Radio Live team leader, Joe Cucchiara.
Hi, good afternoon. Welcome in to Real Estate Radio Live. No, this is not Joe Cucchiara. Joe's taking a day off, and he said, Jack, would you do me a favor? I said, fine. Come down and do the radio show for me today. We had planned to do it. He said, I can't make it, but bring your guest anyway. So I did, and we're lucky enough to have a great person with us this afternoon. As folks know, Joe has done this series, which he's allowed me to participate in, on starting something in Silicon Valley. We've done about 30 shows. We finished that effort in 2018. We started a new effort on a follow-on set of shows, which is called Growing Your Business. And so the idea is to take the journey of startup through growth. And today I thought, well, if I could get him, and lucky enough he was available, Andrew, thank you for being here. Andrew Gardner is a serial entrepreneur, and he is going to tell us about his journey in doing something that's quite unique and special, and he brings unique talents with the team that he has. And so, Andrew, tell the world a little bit about yourself, kind of where you grew up and how you got started in the field that you're in.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank you. I am honored to be here.
Of course.
So thank you. Okay, well, it was a cold and windy night.
Right.
My kids say Dad, you can stop saying long story short.
You don't look old enough to have kids, Andrew, I have to say.
Okay.
But go ahead, you look good.
Thank you. So, well, gosh, I don't know how far back to go, so I'll just give a little context and then you can ask me more questions. I have a tendency to talk more than I listen. I'm trying to change that. So, born and raised in the Bay Area, Silicon Valley. Went to college at UCSB after I had a cup of coffee at Chico State, which was, ironically, the party school moniker left Chico and followed me to Santa Barbara. But I think that was an accident. I think it was a coincidence. So I have a degree in English, and I think like a lot of young people, it's funny, I'm doing this with my kids. They're trying to find their way.
Right.
There's a handful of people that you figure, hey, when I grow up, I want to be a pilot or an attorney or a astronaut, a doctor, but I wasn't one of those people. So I told you on the drive up, I just wanted to be rich and famous, and then after a while, just rich. And so I did insurance, I did real estate, I had a number of odd jobs. I counted them up a couple of weeks ago, and I think about 20 or 30 of them construction. I worked the summers in Alaska. Anyways, the short of it is I ended up selling insurance to a guy that had an advertising agency, and he was being very successful, enjoying an incredible measure of professional success and income. And I thought, gosh, I'm going to try that. So
I'm as smart as him. I can do this
well. And that was it. And full disclosure, he was a little nefarious and unscrupulous. And I thought, you know what, I can do this. So my best friend,
without being nefarious and unscrupulous,
right?
That's good.
I got my best friend from high school and college who had a master's in business administration, and we started a recruitment advertising agency. And it was a little bit of the right place, right time.
What was the name of that?
Advanced Recruitment Advertising.
Okay. And didn't it go by some other name? Did it have
name? Well, we also, after a couple of 3 years, started a job board, BA Jobs, BayAreaJobs.com.
That was big. That was a big job board.
You know what? It was.
It still is, right?
It is. It's a going concern, and its best days are behind it, but just because the industry has evolved so much.
Right. So one of the things we're doing in this series when we talk about growing your business, and people who are listening to the string of shows know that we said at a certain point you have to find more talent to add to your team. It's very hard, even with 2 partners or even 3 partners, or sometimes I had lunch today with a founding team, and I said, nice team, but, how are you going to grow your business? Do you have someone that's looking out for talent? And they looked at me like, we have to do that? And it's like, yeah, if you're going to get $10 or $20 million of venture capital, how do you deploy it? Part of it is obviously finding the right talent to fill in the gaps of where the team or the two partners or 3 or 4 people lack that ability. So you actually are in that business of finding talent, and you have a lot of years of experience doing it.
I do, and you make a really good point. When I'm consulting, so just to set the record straight, so what I do in as short a description as possible is I help companies figure out how to hire the best people to facilitate their goals, their growth, their whatever they think they want to do or be. And you're right. If you don't have a plan, if you don't know where you're going, you're not going to get there. And if you keep going the way you're going, you are going to get there.
And if you get to the fork in the road, take it. That's what Joe Cucchiara would say. But you have a company now which succeeded. You sold that business successfully. BA Jobs.
BA Jobs in the Advance.
You sold that, and then you had a legal, as we talked about on the show, you could have a legal non-compete when you sell a business. That's legal. That's one of the few exceptions in California law. For a period of time, you couldn't compete. Then the time period expires, and you get the itch again to start another company.
Right.
So you made your first $10 million or whatever the number was. I won't probe you on that. And you said, I'm not done yet. So you're the classic, and we like to talk about this at my firm, Computer Law Group. We like to talk about, we really love working with serial entrepreneurs because typically they bring to the table so much more than the young MBAs or the young engineering students that we see right out of Stanford or Berkeley or Santa Clara who are like, yeah, I'm doing this. Do you think it's going to succeed? And they don't really have a sense of what the next steps are. We give them a lot of advice, a lot of counsel, but the serial entrepreneurs come in saying, look, I've done this before. I know where I'm going. Just stay out of my way and support me. So you got that bug again, and you said, I'm going to do it again, and this time you're calling it the hierarchy.
The hierarchy.
The hierarchy, is that intentionally a double entendre?
It is.
Okay, so tell us what.
Well, the hierarchy.
The hierarchy.
Well, we just wanted something clever. Okay. Full disclosure, I didn't pick the name. My partner did, and it's just the key to hiring, the hierarchy.
Yes.
And that's really what we do. We help companies figure out the key to hiring success.
Right, so is it big companies, medium-sized companies, small companies? Where's your sweet spot?
Our sweet spot is, if it used to be if you're buying, I'm selling, but it's not that anymore. Our sweet spot is really...
Your check won't bounce. If your check won't bounce, we'll see you.
We talked about that on the way up. Our sweet spot is companies that really want and need help, and they're trying to move the needle.
Right.
A couple of areas I should mention that we're real passionate about is veterans, helping veterans transition. From the military to civilian jobs, and then women, and really any diversity or minority. Diversity and inclusion is so underserved right now.
Right.
But we also do the blocking and the tackling. Engineering, biotechnology, banking, finance. My partner would chastise me if I didn't mention this. We're pretty nimble and lean, and it costs the same amount of money for us to administer or service an account that spends $1 million that spends $100,000.
Really?
But the truth is I really want to work with people that want and need the help, that appreciate what we do, and again, want to move the needle.
So will you do a startup for stock, or do you look at that like, that's a little too risky?
Absolutely.
You'll do a startup with stock?
Well, maybe not. It depends. If it were my kids, probably I would do it. But I would do a combination of equity and compensation.
So you really are trying to help companies find the right talent, more from the company side than the individual side, and they will give you a mission that says, we want to hire veterans, help us with the program.
Exactly.
And you'll put together a whole program for them. Exactly.
I think one of the biggest values or benefits that we bring to the table is helping companies be realistic, or help them understand that what they want to do. People think, hey, I'm just going to run an ad and I'm going to get the response. No. It's all about hiring the right people.
Right.
And sometimes people don't really understand that it's a science, and it can make or break the success of a company.
Right. So when you look at a new engagement, the typical situation, do you say to yourself, gosh, this is going to be hard. We're in Silicon Valley. Data scientists are in high demand, short supply. I've heard stories of people in AI we talked in the last show, we had a guest over who's doing AI said, the sign-up bonus for these people is like $250,000 here in Silicon Valley. That's why it's hard to do it in Silicon Valley. Are you finding certain areas where it's almost impossible to get the talent here in Silicon Valley? I mean, what do you do? What do you do with that? How do you handle that?
So, two things. One, first of all, you make a great point, Jack. The truth is everybody's looking for the same people. So if that's true, then how can you position yourself, and how do you earn the trust and affect of someone that is not looking? More often than not, companies, employers want to hire people that are already gainfully employed and doing a good job, and they're assets. So you kind of begin with the end in mind. How would you approach this person? What are these people reading? Where do they live? Who are they working for? Who are your competitors? And you kind of build a profile. And then once you build the profile, then you kind of back into it. And it's a subtle science. I always tell people there's passive job seekers and active job seekers.
Okay.
In other words, you're going to get the response from the people that are looking. So let's just presume that's a given. So then how am I going to get the response to my ads or my need from the people that aren't looking? And that is a process. It is not an event. It's usually nurturing. It's identifying them. It's reaching out to them. Hey, I saw your profile on LinkedIn. I thought you might appreciate this article on data science. You know, I saw you came to our career portal and watched a video on what it's like to work here. So you have a profile in a CRM, and you kind of build that out. The other thing you do, it's kind of commonsensical, but I'm never not amazed when people don't realize it, is like-minded people run with like-minded people. So you tap into, there's something called an employee referral program, where if I'm working at your law firm and you like me and I'm a prototypical hire, then who else do I know?
Right.
I mean, and so obviously the existing talent is a hotbed.
Oh, you'll interview the existing talent and say, tell me about people in your network. And if they say something like, oh, there's a big meetup of people like us on tonight, say Thursday night, you'll go out of your way to make it to that meetup to sort of mingle with those people?
And actually even a step further, Jack, and I kind of not even say it's a hiring event, or it's really, hey, we're having a meetup. It's not a hiring event. If you want to learn more about this company, 𝗥𝗲𝗎𝗓, Genentech, you name the company, come by and visit. On Thursday, we're going to have some hors d'oeuvres, and we're going to talk about artificial intelligence. We're going to have a panel, and all these smart, intelligent, well-connected people are going to be there. Come by. And then,
you know, it leads to a story I should tell you, because obviously this is a good story. It just ties right in.
Please.
You'll laugh. You know, I have a bunch of young lawyers in my firm, Computer Law Group. We're in Palo Alto, and they want to aspire to start attracting their own clients. So I'm very supportive. You know, years ago, the partners bear hugged all the clients, and then they woke up one day and say, when we get older, that's going to be hard to sustain a firm without younger people getting clients. So I have an MBA from UC Berkeley. I have an MBA as well from Columbia University. So I've got a big network from business school. I get a big network from law school. So I get a notice that in the local bar, one of those business schools is having a little get-together, and would I go to it? And I think to myself, I'm just going to give this to the younger lawyers and say, you should go and mingle. These are non-lawyers. This is like you being the fox in the hen house. There's no lawyers. These are all the business people that need lawyers. So a couple of the young lawyers, they went last night and they came in this morning, and they said, yeah, you know, it's amazing. You know, you're right. There were no lawyers there. There was just business people there.
That's beautiful.
And I say, you know, and they're like, I felt really uncomfortable. I said, start getting comfortable, because you want to push yourself out of the comfort zone. That's how you build skill in dealing with people, because then they get to know you, and it might take 3 or 4 meetings, 5 or 10 emails, 10 or 20 phone calls, then trust is built. And, you know, I've had clients call me 20 years later. The guy today I had lunch with, I remembered I had read a paper when I was, you know, studying computer science in New York. I had read one of his papers back in the 70s.
Wow.
And I was reminded, and he said, God, you remember my paper? I'm so thrilled, you know, can I get your card?
Nice.
He was like, you know, the fact that you have such a good memory must mean you're a good lawyer. It was kind of a funny remark. And I said, that's the kind of network you build over time. So you're doing that, in effect, for finding talent that you're under some search engagement for an employer, for a potential opportunity.
Yeah.
And yet, it's funny because a lot of people think, oh, well, I can just go on the Internet. That's not necessarily going to work.
No.
I mean, what do you think about what the Internet's done in this area? Joe and I talk about Zillow and lots of other things that are changing real estate every day. But what do you think about for your area where you're really trying to find unique talent for a special opportunity? Like, does it
Jack,
work?
That's a great question. So it's a double-edged sword. One of the challenges that all TA, talent acquisition infrastructures, face is they're trying to economize and commoditize the hiring process and streamline it and make it more efficient and more effective. Time to fill, time to hire. How can I get it down from 45 days to 30 days? On-time talent.
That might work for robots, but it can't work for humans,
well,
right?
and it doesn't.
Right?
I mean, it really doesn't. And that's why your story is so apt, because if I'm in I'm not going to call it a cocktail party, but a networking event where it's not a hiring thing, and I can just be myself and I can talk to you and get to know you, it really personalizes the experience. Whereas in an interviewing situation, I'm going to be stiff. I'm not going to be myself.
Right.
And so if I can engage you in a way where you're comfortable and we can talk about anything, I really like that you set that up for your partners.
Well, if you don't signal that to the younger people, because what's the bigger message for younger people? You really should spend some of your hours, and the firm will acknowledge it. You can write it into your time diary and report on it. It's actually a growing number of hours to build your own profile in the community so that people get to know you and the fact that you're available and they know who to turn to. And if you don't do that, I got a call this morning from a guy who I hadn't talked to for like 15 years. And I said, why'd you call me? He said, I trust you. And I got a problem. And you picked up the phone. He said, you picked up the phone, and here's the problem. And I said, God, we haven't talked 15 years. He says, yeah, I've been busy. I've been buying and selling companies, but now I've got a problem. And, when you look at stuff like that, it's the trust that you build, and it does take a certain percentage of your time. I mean, they delegate to you that effort, but ultimately they also have to make a connection with the talent you find, right? Because you find it, you make sure it fits all their check boxes. And then when you deliver it, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to not fail to screw up, right? They must screw up all the time.
Well,
right?
You said something really profound just now. So here's the interesting thing. So because I help companies pick the right people, it stands to reason that I, in turn, help people pick the right companies. Right. And I'm never not amazed.
You're like a yenta. You're really like a yenta. Yeah.
But so are you. And so the point I bring forth is that when I'm coaching somebody on how to get a job, the Internet makes it too easy. I can cut and paste my resume and send out 70, apply to 70 jobs in about 15 minutes, and that's not.
What's that called? Spray and pay?
Spray and pray.
Pray. Okay.
Well, and conversely, the employers call it post and pray. Right? I'm going to put my job up, and I'm going to get. And I was telling you, it's counterintuitive because I get too many responses. I've only got a handful of jobs, but when I'm telling somebody the best way to approach it is, are you good at it? Do you enjoy it? Can you get paid?
Right.
What young people, and you're right, it's really important that you incorporate the young people into the evolution or the vision of your company to sustain it. Otherwise, you get stodgy and outdated. So, but a lot of young people think, so they'll go to an interviewing situation. My daughter's a great example. Right. She wanted to make this great impression. She wants to, so she presents what she thinks they want to see or hear. And if that's not who she is,
forget it.
It's not going to work.
It won't work.
And I cannot tell you how costly it is when a company hires the wrong person.
So you would say, be authentic.
Be authentic.
Do what you love, and the money will follow. And follow those, rules 1 and 2, and you'll be fine. Right.
That's exactly, and be authentic and don't personalize. And listen, I'm the first person. I'm very, am I, do I look okay? Is it about me? And it's really not about you. Sometimes no is God's ultimate protection.
Right.
In other words, if I say no to you, it's not because you were dumb or you weren't. It's that you weren't going to be. Maybe it's a culture fit.
Right.
Maybe it's whatever it is. And so when people they kind of hide behind the computer and send these things out, they get discouraged. Oh, no one called me back.
No, I agree. I mean, I look at my own life when, I wasn't clear I was going to become a lawyer. I studied in a strict Catholic high school, thought I was going to become a priest. course, started meeting women.
I didn't know that. Seriously?
Opposite sex, changed everything.
Wow.
You know,
you were going to be a priest?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good story.
I got to interview you on my show, mister.
Okay, so we'll do that at some point. Anyway, went to college, thought, well, you know, what am I going to be? Well, everyone thought I was really smart. I guess I was. I did well in high school. And I thought, oh, pre-med, because everyone's going to be a doctor, right? And then I realized, you know, I don't know that I want to be a doctor. And then somewhere in this, I converted to computer science, did really well in that, and was lucky enough.
Do you have a degree in computer science?
Yeah, master's degree in computer science. And then, of course, I thought, well, you know, I really want to get to the West Coast to open a software company, because that was back in the day before, you know, anyone thought software companies would be separate from hardware companies. IBM sold both hardware and software on mainframes. The personal computer industry was just starting, so I was right there at the beginning. And some professor said to me, you know, you're a smart guy. You really should go to law school. And I was lucky enough to have a roommate who said, yeah, we should study for the LSAT together. Look, I just paid for this exam program. And I said, I don't need to take an exam program. I'll just read your books. So I leveraged off his books. We had like this side bet that I would get a higher score. He said, no, the exam books, the study, you know, the actual, back then the stuff was not delivered electronically. You went to classes. I said, you're wasting time in class. Just study the books and do practice exams. And, you know, if he's listening, he's going to laugh and say, no, it was different than this. But he was a good friend of mine, and we made a bet, and I won the bet because I got the higher score. He didn't get high enough score. I got in. So he pushed me to say, you should go. And he brought me to one of the professors back at Senior University in New York, where I was graduating with both a bachelor's and master's degree at the same time, and said, he got into law school. He got a high score. And the professor said, you should just go to build your network. And then you can start your business. Just land there. You'll meet a lot of people. They're associated with money and business people. And I was lucky enough because I really wanted to go to an East Coast law school. I originally thought I would go to like Yale or Harvard.
Seriously?
I was lucky enough to get rejected by them and get accepted to West Coast law schools. I ultimately went to UCLA and was lucky enough to land at UCLA because Mel Nimmer, who's the famous professor and in the area of intellectual property, was then on the Cantu Commission that was studying software protection by copyright. He became a mentor to me, and as a result of that, I stayed through the 3 years and became a lawyer. I probably would have left the law school if I'd gotten in and just not linked up. So your point is valid, which is sometimes a no is exactly what you need, and it sends you off in a different direction, but that's the right direction for you to take.
Jack, are you serious?
Yes,
Doctor, lawyer, maybe I'll be a computer science,
and maybe an Indian
astronaut,
chief, right?
Maybe a pirate.
There you
go.
But I was lucky enough to land then in Silicon Valley, and I've told this story, and I had lunch today with one of the original partners of, you know, Davis, Stafford, Kellman, and Fenwick, now Fenwick and West, Blake Stafford, and, you know, I arrived at the right time, and I remember his interview of me, and he said, look, if you know software, you're in the right place because we are representing lots of companies that are doing software, and he was right, and that firm has since been very successful. Of course, we at Computer Law Group have since split off from there. We've been very successful, and a lot of firms have been successful because the Valley has been so successful. And the real point is now maybe is the Valley so successful it's just too congested? Is there just too much pressure? You know, we drove down here. It took a while to get here because of the congestion. It's the middle of the day. I mean, I don't know. You've been here forever, so I don't know what your perception is. You know, I grew up on the East Coast, but you've lived, studied, went to high school. You've been here on the West Coast from day one. What have you seen? Do you think the Valley is overheated at this point, or what do you think about it?
So I think it cycles, right? So I remember when we started our ad agency in the early 90s, it was the people, the credit people at the Chronicle and the Mercury were laughing at we had an American Express with a $3,000, and they just laughed at us like, you guys, because the job market was at the bottom, but it started to go up, and then the Y2K, and went boom, and then back again, and now we're on a resurgence. It's a little bit of a what goes up, what must come down. So it cycles, but right now it is extremely hot, and I don't foresee anything changing for years, at least 2 years, probably more like 3 before it plateaus or settles down. But I want to ask you a question. Did you have, I'm in the priest thing too, so computer science.
Yeah, I know.
Okay,
Quite
but so how influenced were you by Winnie, Weedy? No, not that. Feminine, second declension,
Yeah, there you go. All the conjugations.
Good for you. What kind of pressure or influence did you get from your parents or your peers?
Very little from my parents. My parents always believed in education. They were blue-collar workers, hard workers. My dad, literally worked every day of his life. And then he retired, and he found retiring.
As an attorney?
No. My dad owned a little delicatessen in Brooklyn called Russo's Delicatessen. Nice. And it was a decent, it was a decent living, but they lived really day to day, week to week. The margins are tight. The big supermarkets came in and changed the game. Now Amazon is changing the game on the supermarket.
Remember Webvan?
It's all changing. No, actually, I do remember Webvan because when it got started, one of my classmates at Columbia University said, my dad just started Webvan, and it's going to be the future. And I said, boy, I hope you're right. And, didn't turn out to be right. It was too early. But now it's pretty much the way things go. So let's talk about automation for a minute.
Okay.
Where do you see it going in your field? Because there's clearly people that think it can be automated and you don't need to spend a big budget on people like you, just like there are people out there that say you don't need to spend money on lawyers and don't need to spend money on real estate brokers, you don't need to spend money on, investment advisors or what Joe does, which is lending, and really Joe provides a concierge service for all aspects of real estate. That's part of what he does with this program, is get education out. But where do you see it going in your field, which is this talent acquisition for companies that are growing and need talent? Do you think it's going to do anything to you?
Oh, totally. So the focus is how can we be more discerning and how can we be more strategic about finding and hiring the right people. So not so much, historically it's a lot like a rocking chair. A lot of movement, but you never get anywhere, right? So now it's like, okay, so how can we, so it's all around assessment. It's all around, the outreach is not to come one, come all. It's like, hey, there's platforms where you have to take a test.
Right.
And you get assessed on your computer science skills or whatever it is.
So screening tools are
there. A lot. And so all of the focus and the tools are the artificial intelligence thing and the machine learning, data analysis. They start looking historically about who's coming from where were the hires, the best hires coming from, who are our top performing employees, what do they look like? So they profile them.
Right.
Then they back into it. But you made a really good point earlier. Even with all that consolidating and streamlining, it still comes back to phone screens.
Yes.
And then bringing people in.
Okay.
And then giving them some sort of opportunity to spend time with the company itself not in a non-interviewing situation, but hey, come spend the day. It's particularly the higher the level of position, Jack, the more time they're going to spend.
Oh, do some shadowing. In for a while.
Can this person fit in? Will this person contribute? Because everybody talks a good game, but it's a little bit, hey, I don't want to listen. People don't listen to what you say so much anymore. They listen to what you do.
Okay.
So it's a lot about your references, your background, your history, and then how does that apply here? And they do a ton of vetting and consideration and assessing formally and informally to streamline it. So I think it's a combination of two, but I will go back to what I said at the outset. They're never going to be able to fully automate the hiring. It just doesn't make sense. It's like automating a marriage. You just can't do that. You know?
Well, I guess there are people that think you can take a lot of the sort of matching process and put it online. That's why there are all these dating sites. But then there are a lot of people, the divorce rates are still pretty high. The number of employees that aren't happy, the latest statistics are like 50%.
I just read a study on the leading cause of divorce is marriage.
the leading cause of
I think I made that up. Oh,
the leading cause of employees being unhappy is they actually got the job and realized that it wasn't their dream after all. The point that you made earlier.
Well, so Jack, the metaphor is very, very relevant of dating. Like when I'm telling people, like being good at getting a job is not something you want to be good at. It's like being good at dating.
Yes.
But conversely, the dating metaphor is very apt because everybody, I'm on a dating app.
Yes.
And everybody loves puppies and baby smiles and sunsets.
And walks on the beach, right?
I have such a hard time taking.
Particularly when it's cold.
But it's the same thing with, I'm always on time. What don't you do? Well, I have a hard time not working. I love working. It's like people want to tell you what you want to hear. And back to what we said, we agreed, be yourself, be true. Because it's going to come out sooner or later, and sooner is better.
So, Andrew, tell people who really companies, this could be big, medium, and small companies that need this talent acquisition service, really very customized service. Tell them where you're at and how to reach you so that people will know who are listening to this.
That's lovely. You can find me on LinkedIn, Andrew Gardner, Gardiner. I'm always interested in connecting with people. The Hierarchy, my email address is andrew@thehierarchy.com. Andrew at BA Jobs still works. All roads lead to Rome.
And you have a phone, too? You have a cell phone? Ever give out the number? Or no, I don't want to do that. They'll inundate me.
Listen,
you don't need it anymore.
I think it's in my profile, but it's 771-1924 in 650.
650.
God, remember when it was just 415?
Yeah, I know. Right. So I'm 𝗥𝗲𝗎𝗪 with Computer Law Group, the managing partner there. We have offices in Palo Alto and San Francisco, 650-327-9800, www.computerlaw.com. And you can reach me by email at jack@computerlaw.com. Happy to help you. We send a book to anyone that asks a really good question. There are really good questions that people ask that plays into the agenda for the shows.
Oh, good.
This is a good story. This is really how you grow your business, find the right talent. Don't make mistakes. The cost of churn is way too high. As I said at one of the shows, I have a client that routinely has said, one bad hire can kill 10 good hires.
Amen.
And he's changed that recently. He said, let me correct that. One bad hire can kill 100 good hires. Like literally his view is, do you know what it's like to kind of end up having some milk that has a bit of vinegar in it? You got to throw all the milk away. That was his analogy. You just throw it away. It's just ruined. Don't be stupid. Make good hires. Andrew can help you. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you for coming. Thanks, Joe, for having us. We appreciate it. We'll look forward to picking up this conversation with you next time. Thank you.
You've been listening to Real Estate Radio Live. For more information on today's program, visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com.